want to start when we. So we're live now, but I want to let the chat know.
Meow.
Or meow. I'll just do a little clap for the audio portion, so I know when to cut it. Ben knows those techniques, right, Ben? Come on.
You betcha, pal.
That's film school 101. Or that's
Ben,
what
feel
they
free
bring up
to.
the action thing. Right there. What do you want, Sean? Or
I was gonna say, Ben, feel free to add your show beverage into the notes.
Oh, where's that?
Oh yeah, geez, God. Sean's a note Nazi. We got right there. That's awesome. All right, so let's go. We're gonna go in 3, 2. Hey, what's going on, everybody? It is I'm getting used to coming back to Mondays. We're on Monday, the 16th of November, 2015. This is Brian from SeacoastBeverageLab.com, and this is the Seacoast Beverage Lab podcast, episode number 128. Just like California with rain, we've had a drought with the guests. Am I right, guys? All right, those jokes are over for the night. But we have a guest tonight, and we've been itching to talk to him again. It's been almost 3 years since he's been on the show, but he's one of our very few people to come back or to actually want to come back and talk to us. But we're going to get to him in a second. I unfortunately didn't get his beer in time, but I am drinking a Pretty Things Field Mouse's Farewell, a Harvest Saison from the fine people down at Pretty Things, and it is very good. I picked this up over at shout out to the new location of Redstone Liquors in Stoneham, because man, if you guys need a beer store in Mass that's like sort of close to New Hampshire, but it's still worth the trip, Redstone. They didn't pay me for that. It is awesome. Sean, you've been to Redstone, right?
Been to Redstone, and I've also been to their new location in Andover. Great dudes. Really love the place.
Yep, and a good move on their part. They both physically and on Twitter too. Every day they post what they get, so they always keep you up to date. But yeah, their new space is going to be great. I think Ben, we went there once too, right?
Nope. Negative.
Well, it must have been someone else.
Yep.
Yeah, my other podcast buddy. Well, speaking of, and real quick, big shout out to the mask right here. I've been playing this game called Fallout for way too long the past couple days, so if I seem spacey, it's because of that. But Ben Watts is joining us in place of Carla, who is on assignment in Dublin, not for the podcast. We don't have that money, so. Ben,
could you actually say that out loud?
Oh, she's been tweeting up a storm, so
okay.
yeah, it's official.
Okay.
So she's in Dublin. Guinness invited a bunch of beer writers, and obviously the podcast didn't make the cut. But that's why we brought Ben in, because Ben's not doing anything. What's up, Ben?
What's up, you guys? Happy to be back. I filling in for Carla, figured I would drink something Irish, so I grabbed Beer Irish's New Hampshire Maple Wheat. Never tried it.
Wow.
Been hearing a lot of chit-chat about them, and found it at my local here in Maine, so picked that up. Pretty good. Nice little bit of maple syrup in there. I enjoy it.
Nice. We have not, and I don't keep track of the beers that we have in the show to a T, but I believe that's the first Beer Irish to appear on the podcast. So Ben, you're the man. Yeah, and the chit chat is real on Facebook, as is a lot of chat on Facebook about that brewery. But as long as you like it, awesome. And speaking of awesome, Sean Jansen.
Hey, how's it going? I'm Sean Jansen from TwoBeerGuys.com. I'm currently enjoying a Left of the Dial.
Son of a.
Which is it's an IPA.
It's like you left us hanging for just the right amount of time before I'm like,
I didn't know if I was going to say something else on it too.
It is find out next episode.
It was. We can get into this conversation with when our guest is ready. Yes. But I believe at one point, if we go back all the way to episode 15, it might have been a conversation of like I'm not really planning on brewing an IPA, and then here it comes up with a gem left of the dial, which is really meant what it's supposed to mean. It's out there.
Nice.
It's 4.3% ABV, and it's delicious.
Man, well, let's get into it. Sean, you followed the homework properly. You have the beer from our guest joining us for the second time, and his last appearance was. There's a train horn. His last appearance was episode 15. Chris Lohring of Notch Brewing. What's going on, Chris?
Not much. Thanks for having me. Glad to be back.
Please. What are you drinking?
My camera situation's tricky. See if I can do this. So I got pills.
Nice.
which
Oh,
is Notch Session Pills. Our original Czech Pilsner have been around for 4 years now. Still our biggest selling beer, even more so than the IPA.
awesome. Well, gee, I appreciate you coming back. We definitely have a lot to talk about because 3 years has been a bit. And I just want to give a quick shout out to the chat. If you guys are watching this live, you can go to sblpodcast.com. The chat's filling up. Big shout out to Raising the Barstool, aka Zach. He was drinking a Sterne Pivo. Did I say it right, Chris?
Chernay, like a chair.
Chernay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sterne Pivo. Which is this? Has it been in cans long?
It hasn't. So we did that first 4 years drafts, sometimes in 22s, not often in 22s.
Yep.
And this year we released it in cans for the first time. So it's only been in cans for about a month and a half now.
That's a good brew.
And
Shout out.
we changed the name. So Chernay Pivo is Czech for black beer.
Mhm.
It's not an easy thing to say, as you just demonstrated. So when we went to cans, we made the beer name Black Lager. The style name remains in the can, which is Chernay.
Nice. And still available only in Mass?
Mass and Maine. Actually, Maine just got their shipment today, so
Oh,
I'll
nice.
be out in Maine later in the week.
Awesome. I'll have to check 7-Eleven because I'm pretty sure I saw a can of Notch up there a couple weeks ago, which is good stuff from Kittery. Maybe I'm lying, but I believe I saw something. But so I don't even know where to start. But Sean was kind of leading towards something, but I kind of want to kind of get a more high level how things have been the past 3 years for Notch, and then I do hear there's an actual brewery in the making.
An actual brewery. Not
Yeah,
just
well-
smoke and mirrors.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Who's behind the curtain? What's going on here?
Yeah, so it's been a good since we talked to you guys last. It's been a good run for us. We've done a lot of things since then. We moved from bottles to exclusively cans, and that was a very big move for us. I always wanted our beer in cans, but that wasn't always available to me. I started Notch as basically a contract brewer, whatever you want to call it, but I've been a brewer for a long time, and I had relationships, and I went to breweries with excess capacity, and they allowed me to brew my beers there. And so that's how I grew Notch. In that, for the first couple of years, session beer was still this kind of unknown entity, an unknown name, and I couldn't build a brewery around a concept that people couldn't even understand and I thought would work. So my goal was to get volume to a certain level, and then at some point build our own brewery, which we're in the process now of doing in Salem, Massachusetts. That will be open in the spring of next year.
Awesome.
Yeah, so it's been a good couple of years for us. We've seen the session category grow in awareness. We've seen a lot of things happen within session IPA in particular. That's grown a lot of awareness for session beer. There's been acceptance of it. It was met with a high degree of resistance when I started.
For sure. And then also, was there resistance on the definition end or just the beer category in general?
Everything.
Yeah.
Name it. There was resistance.
Yeah.
The definition, the category in particular, misunderstanding that session beer has actually been something that's been around for a long, long time and is not new. And so a whole bunch of hurdles we had to get over. We're still not over all of them, but the one thing that has happened is that session beer as an ongoing entity is here. It's not going away. People realize that there are modest ABV beers that have a great deal of flavor and interest, and they like drinking them as an occasion beer or all the time. And that's all we're looking for, is session beer to be an option. It's not an absolute. It's not binary. It's not one or the other. It's just one of many things you can have, and that's what craft beer is all about.
Sure.
Options.
Yep.
Personally, for you, I'm just curious as to how the idea of session sort of came around. Did it come out of European styles? Did it come out of a necessity for having lower ABV beers available to you?
It's a great question. A number of things happened all at the same time. So my initial brewing career ended, and I jumped out of the industry because I was burnt out. It was like 2005, and after brewing for over 10 years, I got to the point where I hated beer. I didn't like where the direction the beer industry was going. I didn't like a lot of things about what was happening in the beer industry. I decided to take a leave of it for a little while. But during that time as a brewer, I apprenticed under a couple British brewers, and I had a really intimate relationship with cask beer, in particular bitters. And those were always my favorite beers to consume. And then after I got out of brewing, in I think it was 2005, I took a trip to the Czech Republic, and this whole world of session beer was presented to me that I didn't know existed. And it was lager, and it was flavorful lager, and it was pale, and it was amber, and it was black, and all these styles that I never knew existed because I thought the Czech Republic, based on what beer experts in the United States had fed me, was one style of beer. And I realized there was a whole bunch of different beers, and that was a little bit of epiphany that happened right then. And that beer of really great quality and great flavor could be 4%. And so I started to think about this a little bit in terms of my own personal habits and how I drink, and what I like to drink, and how I couldn't find any of these beers in the United States around about 2007, 2008. I said, this is a really good point for me to get back into brewing, because that was always my intent. I didn't want to get out of brewing, but I definitely needed a break. I needed a breather. And session beer was, it was my ability to get back in, not only from a business perspective, but just from a consumer perspective. That's what I love to drink. I really love session beers. I love all the different styles, and I wanted to have. I was given the opportunity to provide a lot of different styles that people didn't know existed, that didn't know session beers, that didn't know brewed for hundreds of years. And that's a lot of fun to me, is exploring different styles, and doing it in a way that really challenges people's preconceived notions about what beer and craft beer in particular is all about.
Now, do you have any sense of idea why the Czech beers were of that? Was anything based on like the taxation of the beer was related to the alcohol percentage, so it was kind of like just lower ABV beers were sort of cheaper in a taxation sense?
It wasn't quite like the Brits, where wartime rationing, taxation drove their alcohol content down, which led into the pub session kind of habits. In the Czech Republic, they're a lot like the Brits in that they have a pub culture. It's a social center. It's where you go with families. It's where you go to talk about sports and politics and religion, all these other good things that happen in the pub. And the beer that's most consumed in the Czech Republic, and you really don't discover this if you only go to the tourist city center of Prague, but the most consumed beer there is a 4% lager, which is my session pills is modeled after. And to me, it's more functional than it is driven by scarcity or taxation or whatnot. It's a beer you can have multiple pints of and hang out in your pub for a long period of time. I tell a story. It's a fun one, but first, in 2005, when I first went to the Czech Republic, my wife and I were sitting in a pub, and there was one style of beer, one brand of beer, and it showed up at your table, and the second one came without you asking for it. And the third one came without you asking for it. I'm looking at my wife saying, all right, how do we stop the flow of beer here when we want to stop the flow? And the fourth one came. I'm like, holy, all right, I'm 4 in, it's 4%, I'm doing pretty good. And there was a Czech guy sitting next to us. We didn't speak a lick of English, and he just looked at me and put a coaster over the top of my mug, and basically that's how you stop the flow of beer. But that's the mentality. You're there for multiple pints. It's like the British pub. You're there for multiple pints. You're not one and done. You're not sipping and nursing and contemplating, how great this beer is. You're talking to the person next to you, and it's social. Yeah. And a 4% pale lager that's hoppy and flavorful really is a great way to experience that. Again, like the British bitter. So, to your point, Sean, I think culturally that's more about functionality than it is about taxation, or it is about wartime rationing or that kind of stuff.
That makes a lot of sense, and that's probably why the quality was so much higher too, because it was really focused on the actual end product and not out of necessity.
Yeah, the one question that's always asked of me, and it's an expected question, but it's one that's based in the United States' lack of understanding about other beer cultures, is that, well, how do you make a beer a session beer? How do you make your Pilsner a session Pilsner? So you don't think about it that way. These beers have existed as styles of their own, not as a dumbed-down variant of an existing beer, right? No one calls a Berliner Weiss a dumbed-down beer of a stronger Berliner. It is what it is. It's that style. The way British bitter has evolved over the time. There's a lot of examples of that, and we just have to get our head around that. Session beer is not a dumbed-down version of X. It's just what it is. That's the intent of the brewer. They built it up from scratch, and it's not a compromise.
I have maybe like a two-parter. Is it more challenging to make a fully flavored session beer, and if so, what is the detail around that? Why is it more challenging to do so, keeping the alcohol content down but the flavor high?
It's definitely a challenge. I don't think all beer styles have their own challenges, whether it's a lager or an ale, depending on the different style variants below that. If you're brewing a barley wine, you have a whole bunch of set of challenges that are different than a session beer. And it's more about making all those high intensity flavors work in a certain way. And with session beer, it's about bringing those flavors to the forefront. So, when we walk in the brew house, it's just a different mindset. A lot of things I do are nothing different than I would do if I brewed a 6% IPA, but there are definitely some specific things that I need to pay attention to in process and in ingredient selection to make sure that we're really bringing the beer is really showcasing the way we want it to be presented. That goes everything from malt selection. I find that the beers I brew at lower ABV, the malt bill tends to be more expensive than something I would have brewed at 5 or 6%, because you don't have a lot to work with, so what you're working with better be the best you can actually get. So the whole fallacy of session beer being less expensive is something I could talk about all night, because it's almost the opposite. My Cherney Pivo or Black Lager at 4% is more expensive than a lot of beers at 5 and 6% because of the malt that I use in that beer. And it's required because otherwise that beer would be thin and not taste the way that I intended.
Now, from the different malts that you use, is there kind of like a chart that you can figure out where the alcohol, how much sugars you're going to get from it?
Each malt will contribute, a certain amount to the overall yield, and but more importantly, it's not only like how much fermentable sugar is available to the yeast; it's the amount of unfermentable sugar and the types of sugars that are being created. So it's not only the selection of the malt, it's the mash schedules that are in the brew house, and how are you creating a wort that has the fermentable sugars to reach the intended alcohol content, but also have the residual maltose and maltose triose left over, so that the beer is not sweet but has a malt character to it. So all these things are interrelated in terms of just the malt selection and the mash schedule and the timing and the yeast selection as well, because now we're talking about fermentation of sugar. The yeast is a big contributor to the amount of alcohol that's going to be produced as well, the attenuation level. So these things start to intertwine. When we start getting deeper into how thick the mash is, water chemistry, water pH, and so there's a lot of things. Again, not more difficult, just different set of variables that must be thought about to make sure you get the result that you want. So I can't say session beer is more difficult. It's just different. You go about it in a different way in terms of thinking about the beer.
Yeah. Oh, Ben, were you good with the two-parter?
Yeah, I had one other quick
get
question.
in there.
I mean, granted that the sort of unified factor with amongst the beers that you put out is that they're sessions, as opposed to someone who's strictly doing lagers, or in the case of Bear Irish, strictly brewing with Irish wheat here. Is there any sort of unifying factor that you can tie along with the beers? Like, is there a favorite yeast that you like to use amongst them? Obviously, it's going to be different for a lager than an IPA, but anything that you like to see on like a broad spectrum?
Yeah, that's a good question. In that, it's a great question going to, all right, so session beer, you're narrowing your focus, and you can become an expert in like a certain thing, right? Like you're going to only do German lagers. When you start thinking about session beer, though, there's so many different styles that you can create. You're actually not narrowing your focus all that much. You can become a jack of all trades, master of none if you're not careful. And I've had to not do every session beer that I've wanted to, because I don't feel comfortable going to certain areas. So to your point, there's certain yeast strains that I like to use and repeat with. So I brew a lot of lagers because I like Czech lagers and German lagers, and so there's certain lager strains that I really enjoy and I think present themselves very, very well for a session beer. And then when I move to ales, there's certain styles of ales I like to brew more, because I found a certain hop schedule and utilization schedule in hop varieties work very well for session beers, and others don't. So through iteration, if you will, that you've done things a number of times, you find out certain things don't work and certain things do. And in the last 2 years in particular, I've gone in a direction that is really more lager focused in terms of Czech, a little bit of German, and then U.S. American Hoppy Pale Ale direction, which you could call session IPA, and I'm sure we're going to get in that direction.
Yeah.
But I think the American Pale Ale lends itself, especially like around 4%, to a really great session beer that fits very well what the consumer wants right now. So those have been the two kind of paths I've gone down because I've been very happy with the results. Yeah, I've done saisons, I've done Berliner Weiss, I've done Belgian table beers, and I've had success with those. But I found that I've liked these two other paths a lot more because I think they lend themselves to session beer in a way that is more rewarding for me as a drinker. Those are the ones I want to go back to.
Mm.
How about a barrel aged session? Can you still pull flavor from without giving it a?
We haven't tried it yet, but we're gonna when Salem opens up. Our Salem brewery is going to be largely an R&D facility, and I say that in all the fun ways. And that we're going to have a brew house that does decoction, and we're going to have open and closed fermenters, and we're going to have lagering tanks, and we're going to have all the ability to do anything we want to do and experiment that doesn't have to be a widely available beer that sells X amount of cases. We can do a one-off at 10 barrels. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And that's what I've wanted to do for a long time, because the only way you find out if something works is you got to try it on commercial scale and see if it's repeatable and see if through iteration you can improve on it.
Yeah.
So barrel, I have no idea.
Yeah.
Where have you been? You've come out with a number of different beers since you've started. Where did you use for your trial systems before, up until now?
Let it rip. there's absolutely no. The smallest batch I've brewed was a 7-barrel, but that was only English ales, and so most of my trial batches have been 30 barrels.
Wow.
And only one's gone to the drain. And it went to the drain because it was my screw up in the mash schedule. So yeah, I've been pretty fortunate. I mean, I haven't loved every beer that we've done. It's been a while since that's been 3 or 4 years since a couple of beers. I had to give it a shot. Now I've been able to refine what we've been doing, and I feel pretty good about the beers that we've done in the last 3 or 4 years. I think they're all pretty good.
Yeah, so I think since the last time you've been on, at least to our knowledge, you were one of the only focus session breweries as a whole. And even since then, I don't know if Sean or even you yourself, Chris, or Ben know of any focused breweries, but I know there's been a big in the past two years or so. There's been a big session IPA boom. I don't know if you had any kind of thoughts on that. Just in general, how obviously we had the big IPA boom, which is everlasting in my view. It seems like it's always going on, but then they kind of take a session focus. I'll start off by asking this: has the session IPA boom kind of helped make people look more into session beers?
It has. It's also a bit of a negative in that people think session beer is an IPA. We're getting over that, and we'll get over that.
Interesting.
But Founders, and I've said this a million times, Founders has done more for session beer than any other brewery in the country. And I wouldn't be here today if Founders didn't have the success that they have. Because I didn't have the marketing muscle to get session beer in the minds of the consumers the way Founders did. Founders had great legitimacy with the beer geek and the casual beer consumer, and rightfully so. They have great beers, and they've done a really wonderful job. So when all the IPA came out, it was an immediate legitimizer. The beer's good too, and that helped for the category. Now, I definitely saw the resistance I saw in the past was starting to erode from beer buyers at beer bars who didn't understand it, even though it was going to benefit them financially. They couldn't figure those numbers out, but now they could. And from the consumer pulling off the shelf, seeing that, Founders ABV is not where I'd like to see a session beer, but it's below 5, so we'll cut them some slack. It's helpful that the consumer sees that there's session beer in the variety of that, and so I think that helps us. So yeah, I think that was a big step. And then all the Me Too's come out. As much as we're innovative and groundbreakers in craft beer, also there's a hell of a lot of Me Too's. So everybody had to go out with session IPA. If you came out with session IPA in 2015, it's like, well, why are you so late to the party? Because everyone's already here, right? Yeah. So that's okay. What I'm hearing now from some brewers who did come out with session IPAs who offer a wide variety of non-session beers that I have trouble selling. I think it's because session IPAs are already established and some consumers already built in habits, and so it's hard now to break into session IPA. So hopefully we'll see brewers not abandon it, but then start going to other styles that are also session that are just as interesting. But the IPA bandwagon in the United States is pretty strong right now, so we might have to wait a couple of years to see something else kind of break out.
Yeah,
but back to the other question about are there other session focused brewers? Well, Banner Beer, which is Todd, ex-head brewer from Harpoon, came out a couple of years ago. There was a West Coast brewer that was, I forget the name of them, but Pete from Pete's Wicked Ale actually jumped on with those guys for a little while. They really worked with them. But the nice thing about session-focused breweries have been that they've been created by brewers and not marketers.
Okay.
And I think that surprised people. That makes me feel really good, in that this wasn't a marketing thing thought up in a boardroom. This is brewers who, one, like those beers to drink at the end of the day, and two, know how to brew them. That's why I think it came from a real honest place, and not some marketing boardroom guy saying, yeah, there's a market opportunity here, let's exploit it. So I feel good about that as well.
So, and I don't mean to have you look into your crystal ball, but you did mention you hope that other breweries do other styles of session beers. Do you see that as a viable possibility for those breweries that had the success with their session IPAs? I mean, do you see Founders coming out with maybe a session black lager, for example?
I'm not sure, because you can only have so many SKUs.
True.
Sorry, so many styles. Excuse this term.
That's fine. No.
We all can.
I'm not going to call it liquid and product, right? So we can still call them SKUs. So you only have so many slots in the shelf, and you only have so many taps in the tap. So how many of those can you dedicate to session if you're a non-session beer brand? It seems like you really only dedicate one, from what I've seen. Maybe you go to two. I'm not really sure. So it remains to be seen. It depends how big that category can grow. To me, session beer is definitely an opportunity for volume, in that people drink a little more of them, and they're sold in a 12-pack at a reasonable price. And if a brewer wants to scale, it's a good opportunity to maybe get a little more volume. But it's not easy to sell still. We're still in the early stages of it. I have no idea how my 4% Pilsner has maintained #1 status over the last 4 years. Now, granted, I love the beer. I think it's a great beer. I'm really proud of it. But I don't think anyone else in the United States makes. This is called the Czech Pale Desika. Desika is the Czech term for 10. 10 Plato is a starting gravity of the beer. I think there might be one-off somewhere else in the country being brewed. But somehow that's my #1 beer. I hope no one else catches on to that. I hope I can maintain dominance over Czech Desika within the New England market. But who knows? I mean, we'll see. We'll see more of that evolve. But with that, there's been people have been trying to come up with session beers and aren't session beers, and there's that whole conversation that if you come out with a 5.5% beer and call it a session beer, it's like, well, you're just lazy. Brew the beer first and then call it a session beer. Like 5.5% is strong in most mature beer brewing countries. For some reason in the United States, it's a session beer. That's a whole other conversation. I can get wound up about doing these things.
Yes, I mean, so you're saying is next year there's going to be an extreme session beer fest? It's brought to you by Beer Advocate?
No.
Okay, yeah, next question. So, I mean, and this could be me making an assumption, but the success of your brewery the past 3 years has kind of led to this new one that you're building, like a physical brewery in Salem. Can you kind of give us like the road to creating the facility?
Yeah, so with Notch, we've had good success with our beers, and people have enjoyed our beers. And there's two questions that the consumer asks of a brewer, and they're pretty consistent. #1 is, what are your beers all about? That's been easy for me to talk about, session beer session beer styles and the proposition of session beer. The second is where you're from, and that's something that has been difficult for me because I'm honest about our point of production. I do my beers at Ipswich. I also do my canned beers in Connecticut. And you start talking to the consumer that way, and they start to gloss over and move on to the next opportunity. So yeah, I knew that pedigree was important. I did want to have my own facility for a number of reasons, but I didn't want to do that until we had a certain volume where the brewery made sense and out of the gate we're actually profitable, and that we didn't build a brewery with X capacity hoping we would fill those tanks a year down the line. I've been through the first wave shakeout. I don't want to experience that again personally, so I wanted to make sure that we had proper volume to put in our tanks from day one, and we're at that point right now. So it also affords me the opportunity to do some styles that I haven't been able to brew at my host breweries because of either process time, technique, yeast, bacteria, whatever. So that affords us to be a little more creative and experiment a little more, and also have interaction with our consumer, and that you can come into our tap room and beer garden and hang out and have 4.5 liters in a beer garden or in the tap room and have fun and experience Nosh the way that we want to experience it. So,
Yep.
It took us a while to get there, but I've been conservative with pulling the trigger on it because I want to make sure that we're ready to go with it.
In Salem. I mean, Salem's a nice spot. I mean, and not a lot of. I mean, there's some beer things happening there, but Salem's is got to be a sweet spot to open a place.
It's a spot that it was my number one choice. It was difficult because commercial real estate in Salem is difficult to obtain. We finally found a spot. After 2 years, I convinced the landlord it was an appropriate use for the space, and he agreed. It's right downtown, but it's warehouse. It's on the South River that feeds into the harbor. We have a great craft beer consumer base in Salem and in the surrounding towns. We have great tourist trade, basically in all the warm months. So it sets itself up to be a good spot to put a brewery. Salem Beer Works has been here for 20 plus years.
Yeah.
But we're going to be different. We're not a restaurant. We're not going to have a kitchen. We're doing things much different than they are, so we should complement them rather than compete with them. But there's also other things happening in Salem that augment that or complement us. Far from the Tree cider opened up, a couple of years ago. They just opened a tap room. They're making really wonderful cider. Deacon Giles Distillery just opened up in October, making gin and rum. So we're seeing, craft spirits, cider, and beer starting to come to the forefront in Salem, and it's a good spot for it.
Nice.
Now, can you describe, like, for where you're brewing now, how much barrelage that you produce, and then kind of what this new facility in Salem will end up be able to produce?
Yeah, I don't disclose how many barrels we produce because I don't have to yet.
Nice.
And it's hard to figure that out because I brew at a couple different facilities. And I don't disclose that because it either works against you, even if it's working for you. Because if people find out you're bigger than you are, then you get asked a lot of favors. So,
sorry about that.
So we're really small. We're hardly producing anything. Right?
Are you saying that you produce so many barrels that you may not be considered craft anymore?
Oh no, we're still tiny.
Yes.
No, we're still tiny. Yeah, we're well under 10,000 barrels. So that'll give you some perspective.
So how about more at it this way? At Ipswich, they brew batches of what, 30 barrels or 40 barrels?
They have two brew houses. They have a 30 barrel and a 60 barrel, and then I brew at Two Roads, which is a 100 barrel.
Okay, so that's a big batch of beer when you're producing there.
Yeah.
And what's it going to be in Salem?
So Salem, we're going to be small. So Salem, we'll do about. We're going to start with 2,000 barrels capacity, and then we'll build up to 5,000 barrel capacity. But that's only going to be a portion. It's only. You still see my feed here? Here we are.
I see your pick up. You're back. Gotcha.
Yeah, my phone went in hibernation. So we're only going to brew a portion of all our production in Salem. We're still going to do our large can production at Two Roads.
Cool.
For foreseeable future. It's still much more economical for me to do it there. Our smaller drafts, one-offs will come to Salem, and so draft beer out the back door, cans out the back door to retailers, and then on-premise, at our facility over the bar. And that'll be about 2,000 to start. We'll probably the space to go up to 5,000-6,000 barrels. So nothing too big in Salem. It's still gonna the focus is really R&D and fun stuff that we do out of Salem.
And so is it? I never know the laws in Mass because they always change. Are we looking at tasters only?
Full pours. So we'll be doing half liters of all our styles, and we'll have it in a variety of different glassware depending on the style. We'll be doing some fun things. We have I'm importing a Czech draft system, the Czech Republic, and they're really cool. They're a ball valve, so they're not like the standard taps you see in the United States. So that we'll get the true Czech pour. It's a little bit creamier,
awesome.
Tighter head. But we'll also be doing our hoppy ales and a whole bunch of other different styles. It's all communal seating. There's no bar to sit down at, so we're really gonna have a beer hall feel.
Nice.
Same thing happens in the beer garden. And the brewery, I talked about a little bit at the beginning of the show, is going to have a lot of flexibility. True decoction brew house, 3-vessel with a separate mash and decoction vessel, so that we can do really true German and Czech varieties. And then we'll also have open and closed fermentation based upon the yeast that we're using, and then lagering for extended lagering periods for our lagers as well. We'll also be doing cask beer, which is a love of mine. We haven't been doing a lot of cask beer in the last year, but out of the brewery we'll be doing cask beer as well.
Awesome. That's
so we'll
good
have British, So anything that in any beer brewing country that has session type of culture, we'll be celebrating that at our spot sale.
Nice.
Do we have a date at all, or any sort of time frame of when we're shooting for this?
Spring. I know. It's a 3-month window. Hopefully that works.
Nice. Perfect.
Now, for your whole operation, how many people will you be employing once this brewery opens up?
Well, currently we have 4 employees. Myself, I have 2 brand managers that serve Massachusetts and Maine. I've hired Nate Heck, who's a long-time brewer, who's doing promotions for me right now, and will transition into helping with the build-out, and then brew with me in Salem. And then when the Salem facility opens up, Nate and I will man the brewery for the first year or so. We'll probably hire someone else, as we grow. And the tap room will have general manager and servers as required. So we're gearing up on the staff as well.
Nice. And Sean, go. What do you
I was
got?
going to say that we did have a question from the chat room, if that's okay.
What do you got?
So, Raising the Barstool asked a little while ago. He picked up that you mentioned that you're almost an exclusively can brewery now, and the question was, does that mean that we'll see LP, IPL, Hootenanny, and the Mule in cans at some point in the future?
Yeah, absolutely will. So all those will eventually make it to can. So we're going to do basically one-off rotating cans. So one week will be Hootenanny Berliner Weiss, 1 week will be LP IPL, 1 week will be whatever. So we're going to constantly rotate it. So the intent here is really not only a tap room, but in whatever we put in cans. We're going to have a growler machine as well, which is a growler, 32 ounce.
Nice.
The intent here is to turn all the time. You're not going to walk in and see left of the dial pills and all our standards all the time. You may not see any of those. You may walk in and be 12 beers you never heard of. The intent is to have a great deal of variety. We're actually going to brew some non-session beers as well. It won't be our focus, but there'll be typically a couple on that are not session beer.
Cool.
I mean, to create small beer, you must brew a barley wine because small beer is the last runnings of a barley wine, so we have to do that. Right? So, but we're gonna do some non-session beers because it will help us, will inform us and help us learn about other processes and styles that will help us better understand what we're trying to do with session beer. So those will be brewery only. You won't see those out in draft or in cans, but those will be brewery.
Are you gaining any new draft accounts in Salem, or are you kind of pulling those back because of you're going to be there? How does that affect?
No, Salem's been incredibly supportive of us. The accounts that we're not in every bar, and that's expected. But we have at least a dozen accounts in town, and we don't have a kitchen, and we're gonna have a pretzel, right? So when the consumer comes in, they're not coming in to eat dinner or lunch. They're coming in to drink beer. And they have to go somewhere to have lunch or have dinner, and we're going to send them to the accounts and serve our beer and build a good relationship that way. And I think everyone understands that. If you don't, well, we can help you with that. But we're going to be bringing people into town that will, help with the overall traffic of people looking to eat and drink good beer.
Nice. And Sean mentioned the cornmeal, or Raising the Barstool mentioned the cornmeal. I got to give a shout out to that. One of my all-time favorites. I mean,
yeah. So the Mule Corn Lager is something that it's one of my favorite beers we've done. It's a beer that really I think did a couple things. One is it challenged people's preconceived notions that corn is bad as an ingredient in beer, and then it challenged people's idea that light lager was not flavorful. And so those are some things I've really tried to. I've tried to break a lot of myths with Notch. And that we've had these driving dogmas for the last 25 years about what's good and what's bad. and I think we've broken down a lot of them. Not me personally, I think, I'm just mean brewers in general. I've broken down a lot of these myths over the years that, all right, let's open up our minds to different opportunities or options for beers that we may think aren't worthy. And corn is a great flavor enhancer in beer, and done the right way is really is a great beer. So that'll be a mainstay in the summertime.
Now we're talking. Yes. I'll be outside in about 5 minutes. No, I'll be out there in spring.
I'm thrilled to death that beer caught on. It's really been one of those little cult beers that people really enjoy seeing come back. And each year we've mixed it up a little bit in how we employed the corn. The first year I did grits. I had to do a cereal mash, and I used grits from Western Mass. It was a heirloom corn variety. And then the second year we did malted corn. That was from New York, and then Andrea and Christian from Valley Malt malted that for me, which malted corn I didn't know existed. That's an option. And then last year we did straight up flaked maize, and that worked out really well. So we'll do variants of that, but it's been a lot of fun brewing that beer that even myself 20 years ago I thought I apprenticed at a brew pub, and I brewed this light ale beer that had a bunch of flake maize, and it was really bland. But it was bland by design. The recipe stunk. It wasn't the corn's fault, because the recipe was developed to be really bland. So
yeah. Are you going to be showing some more Western Mass love, via Valley Malts in Salem?
Yeah, absolutely. This will give me greater flexibility to use our malts and more frequency.
Awesome.
I try to use them whenever I can. I haven't the last couple of years, not as much as I've wanted to, but when Salem opens up, we'll be able to do a lot of things that I haven't been able to do. I want to do a Massachusetts lager, all Massachusetts 6-row and corn and hops. Really, then that's a whole other project that I've been dying to do. Again, 6-row has been viewed as a really shitty malt, and I want to take a look at that again and make sure that that's just another myth that we need to break. So Valley Malt will definitely be a component of it.
And I'm pretty sure, Nick, that used to work at Valley Malt, now is a brewer over at Wormtown, if I'm not mistaken.
I'm not sure. It wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, because we had People's Pine on when he was working there, and I believe he's now working over in Worcester, which is, but yeah, big shout out to Western Mass, huge fan.
Well, shout out to Ben at Wormtown too. He's been a big proponent of using locally sourced grains when it hasn't been the easiest or most cost-effective to do, and he stuck with it. And that's the thing about using locally sourced ingredients for brewing is that it's not going to be perfect out of the gate, but the only way we all get better is to support each other and grow and let ourselves develop and get better, so that we are at a point that we're at right now. And when I started using Valley Malt, and I've told this story a couple times, is that I always ask my local retailer, well, you should support local. And when local malt was available to me, I better use that, because I've been asking the retailer to support me as a local entity. I better go support this local entity that could be a supplier, and help them develop and grow.
Makes sense.
Now, just Chris, kind of just rolling this up here, being a vet and sort of a veteran in this industry for right now, in the brewing world. What are your thoughts on currently what's going on with the industry of either a lot of talk around succession plans or people looking to really sort of make sure that either they're getting out of the industry or they're kind of making sure that their product is sustainable for a long time into the future?
Yeah, I always say this. If you took the risk, you deserve all the reward. And you can be criticized for taking the reward, but as someone who started a brewery in 1993 when no one believed in craft beer at all, and knowing what those brewers who started 20, 25 years ago had to go through to get where they are right now, there's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears to get to that point. And I can't fault anyone for taking the cash out, because they probably deferred salary, they probably deferred reward, they did whatever they could to scrape and get by. And they got to a point where they're very, very successful. And at some point, it's probably time that you got to think about doing something else. In terms of, it's not going to go to my kid. Are we going to do something else? And if someone shows up at your front door with $1 billion check, I mean, let's be honest. How many people are going to say no to that?
Yeah.
You say no to that, you're a hypocrite. I don't see anyone saying no to that, unless you're a trust fund kid already and it doesn't matter, right? So, that's an extreme example. I think what happened with Ballast Point, because it just is a mind-blowing number.
Yeah.
But so my only concern is that you won't see a lot of change. I think in the next 10 years of those brands that have succeeded to private equity or have sold or partnered, whatever the phrases are. But I think in 15, 20 years, what happens when the original founders are long gone and the original employees are long gone, and it's just a brand within a large house? I think that's when you're going to start to see just a company with accumulation of brands, and I think that's when you lose a soul. You won't lose a soul right away. The genesis of that brand and that brewery is not going to change, but in 20 years it might. But I'll be dead by then, so you guys can figure it out at that point.
What are you talking about? I mean, Sean's easily your age too, so it'd be Ben and I that.
Well, let me phrase it. I hope to be retired and healthy. All right.
Yeah.
But it's tough, I mean, businesses start and they struggle and they get offered a reward, and who are we to criticize them? The people that criticize the most, I find, are the ones who are the least brand loyal, right? They're buying 15, 16 different beers a week, and they're not supporting these people in a way that is meaningful, and they're the ones that chime out and criticize.
But so is that the same person, or is that different from the person that is brand loyal and buys 15 cases of Heady Topper a week to sell?
Well, if that person's buying that much and they sell out and they feel like they've been misled, I get it. You've invested in that company in a way, and you feel you're part of it. When that company sells, it's definitely an empty feeling. It's definitely ugh. But you can move on and find that next brand you can relate to.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, because we still have the conversation that we had 3 years ago, asking brewers that come on the show. How do they see the craft beer boom? Is it approaching or not? A lot of people say no, and so I think we're kind of in this nice norm where if you can find a way to survive, yes, but it has a lot to do with the people that drink it too, both brand loyal and not. Ben and I were talking about this too. There's a difference between someone that likes your beer and then someone that will go on Facebook and completely trash or beer advocate, whatever. There's the people that drink the beer seem to have more of an opinion than those that brew it, but I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. There's not a lot of good answers for this, right? We do live in a free market society where people are rewarded for the effort of creating something, and we can't hold business owners to be indentured to us for the rest of their lives. At some point, they have to find an exit. And that's just I don't know.
Yep.
From my perspective,
I don't have good answers for all those questions.
No, yeah. I mean, no one does, and if you did, you'd be. I mean, we'd have you on every week
be a
talking
genius.
about it. Yeah.
Exactly.
I always say is don't criticize someone for taking a risk and getting a reward. That's what I think we lose sight of.
Good call. Yeah.
From my perspective, I see it as that possibly when 3 years ago people were talking about the rate of breweries expanding and what the actual definition of a bubble, it's almost a newly defined bubble, that it's really that consolidation and some of this other investment opportunities that people are exploring is kind of, well, that is not what the bubble was actually referring to, but it really does then take place of necessary maybe that bubble, or I mean that's just how I kind of look at it from a different perspective a little bit.
There's a lot of people getting. Well, if you want to talk about bubble, you think about the real estate market instead of.
Yeah, and then it just like the bit they go out of business, and this wasn't really a situation of going out of business. It's really just changing it's how the business actually operates. I
don't think there's a bubble. I've used this analogy before. We're going to have a shakeout in that there's a large deal of demand. You think about an hourglass. There's a lot of demand in the bottom of that hourglass that people want a lot of beer. And at the top of that hourglass are a lot of brands and breweries trying to feed all that demand. There's a pipeline between the two, which is the wholesaler and the retailer. The pipeline of wholesalers and retailers is not expanding at the rate of demand and at the rate of breweries coming in. So that pipeline has to become more efficient, and that becomes more efficient by the brewers becoming larger, not by having different brands on the shelf. So at some point, not everyone can play on the shelf and play on taps. But the great equalizer is there are a lot of people who've gotten into the industry who don't want to play on the shelf, who don't want to play on taps. They want to play in their own little brewery and to control that. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean in a very positive way. We have a small brewery. We're going to produce X amount of barrels. We're selling it over the bar. We're selling it in growlers to people who want to come visit us. And it's a viable model because the margins are really good. And there's a lot of brewers who are comfortable not getting beyond that. And that's great. And so you can have 10,000 brewers who can exist in the United States if that's the model. If all 10,000 brewers suddenly want to be on the shelf at Cappies, well, then you're talking about a much different landscape. So, I think we have to take a look at what the goals are for the brewers who are coming online right now, and what their long-term needs are.
Yep.
And my sense is that a lot of them are coming in just because they want the craft and they want to brew great beers, and they don't want to become the next Ballast Point. They want to become a $5,000 brewer who can exist with their wife and kids as the employees and a couple of employees, and that's it. That's okay. That's a really good goal.
I mean, do we need anything else, people? Come on, people in the chat. What do you want? I know Raising the Bar still looking for answers. No, I'm kidding. But Sean, you did mention something in our side chat that I wanted to quickly touch on, and then we might have to, go to something else. You mentioned the topic of beer and running, which Ben and I are obviously as into it as we can get. Team Notch, what's the deal? Had to pull a Jerry Seinfeld on you, but what's the deal with Team Notch?
So we sponsor a number of different things, and one is racing teams, road race.
Nice.
And Cambridge 5K, which is based out of Cambridge, Mass., is a series of 5Ks, about 8 during the year. And it's been a really good vehicle for us to pour beer at and get a team together. Our team for Yule Fest, which is in December in Harvard Square, is 250 runners, and we have to cap it. But for us, session beer leads to certain occasions that make a lot of sense. A lot of runners, like to have more than a couple beers, but 4% beer works better than an 8% beer in that situation. So some of them also know that you go run 5 miles and you have 2 8% beers, and you basically just cancel all the caloric advantage you just gained.
Yep.
So there's that as well. So we've done a nice job with the road races, and we will continue to do it. Just get some national fit for session beer.
Awesome. Well, do you want to stop? You want us to stop asking questions for a couple minutes, and do you want to maybe chime in on a couple of these news things before we end this?
Yeah, sure.
Sweet. We'll give you a breath because I know we've been kind of CNN situation rooming you right now, so we want to give you just time to take a quick sip.
All right.
We had a couple things here. Sean, I don't know where you want to start. We only have a couple quick things. Let's go to the beer camp because that's kind of everything what people know and what do you got here?
So, Beer Camp Across America, the 2016 collaboration has announced preliminary information about the collaboration 12-pack, along with the beer festivals that they will be hosting for 2016. For the collaboration 12-pack, there will be 6 different versions, and I think only one version that comes to us, right? The Northeast and Mid-Atlantic, or do we actually get?
Is that? I think we get it all, right? Oh, because it's 12-pack. I know what you're saying.
Yeah.
So
I don't.
is there a greatest hits of the greatest hits? Like, do we get like the B-sides? Like what? Like that's a lot of beer. Because how did they do it last year? I thought they only had 24.
Right.
So interesting.
Yeah. So this is so.
And it seems like there's a lot less that are from because there was Maine, there was Allagash was in it last year. There's a couple in Mass, but yeah. What are some of the highlights here?
Well, in the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic selection, Trillium, Boston Brewing, in Boston, Mass. Is Lawson's Finest Liquid out of Vermont. Little Dogfish Head's in there. Devil's Backbone. There's I noticed that when we went out to San Diego for the Beer Bloggers Conference, Society is included on this.
Okay.
Along with Port Brewing. That's in the Southwest version.
Mm-hmm.
This kind of ties into another article. Maui Brewing is listed on the NorCal, which also Maui Brewing this past week just announced that they're opening up for distribution in Massachusetts.
No kidding. I just picked up their. They do the coconut porter, right?
Yep.
Picked it up at Redstone. Good stuff.
I think out of the full list, one that would probably be a little bit more surprising, more so based on the how long the brewery's been around and people aren't really too familiar with them, is the Augusta Shell Brewing Company out of Minnesota.
Okay.
Been around for quite some time in Minnesota. I mean, they're a big player in the same market where Surly is, and they're now included in this, which is pretty interesting. Like, I don't know what goes through to be able to select who they're going to partner with. Like Sun King Brewery out of Indianapolis.
Are they? Oh, they're on it. Cool. That's. And I wonder if it'll be a can because, as you remember from the last pack, what was it? Oscar Blues had a can, and someone else had a can of that pack inside the actual beer camp.
Yep.
Diddly. But quick highlight. I will give a quick shout out to Black Raven out of Redmond, Washington. It's a small brewery, but they have some tasty beer out there in the west. Interesting how Austin, Texas is in the southeast, but I guess they didn't have like a category to fit them in. But that's
Exactly.
that's just me being an idiot. Like, it's just like, no, how else can I bash them?
But
no.
Wicked Weed, which some of us went to for BBC 50, is included in the list. So it's a pretty solid list. And for each of these, they're going to hit 6 different cities traveling for the beer festival. Where last year, which was the first year, they did it in Portland, Maine.
And it's interesting because they say, I mean, so if you look at the Northeast category, we go anywhere from Vermont to Virginia, Delaware, Pennsylvania, and Mass, and even North Carolina is listed there too, but that's their own brewery in North Carolina. So it'll be interesting to see where this one was, because last year was Portland. So maybe this year won't even be kind of near us. We'll see what happens. But if you went last year, Sean, it was a good fest.
Awesome fest, really good time. They put on an amazing show.
And I'm just calling things out here, Chris. Please tell me if I'm wrong, but 2017, looking for a entry from the session beer category in this mix pack. So we'll start the campaign now. Hashtag session beer camp, and we'll get you in there. Hashtag session beer camp.
Good luck.
We're doing it right now. I know Raising the Barstool is a social media genius. Give us a year, Zach, and we'll get him in there. That'd be awesome. A little Chardonnay in the mix pack. That'd be awesome. Yeah. Petroleum. Haven't had much from them because it's one of those. You go to the store, it's gone, and you go to the and it's just too far for me to go to the brewery because it's down south, Massachusetts. But yeah, Ben, thoughts, real quick.
I love beer.
I love having you on the show. It's always good having these chats. So yeah, Sean, you mentioned Maui Brewing's coming to Mass.
Yep.
Good for them. Do you think there's going to be confusion between Maui and Kona just by name?
No.
For the uninitiated?
Nope.
Well,
I don't think there's going to be any confusion on it.
How about from a beer drinker standpoint? How about from a beer drinker standpoint, not a distributor standpoint?
Still no.
Okay, cool.
Still no.
All right, cool. Just thinking.
I wanted to mention the other article
Yeah, go ahead.
that I from part of the Brewers Association, and I saw online today that they release monthly a legal and legislative update, which we added here in the notes, and it kind of goes through a bunch of different categories, talking about some of the tax reform stuff that's going on, stuff that's happening in the court system, something that's happening at the individual state levels. And I thought 2 things kind of stood out to me that kind of was like, okay, wow, that's kind of weird. The first being the state attorney general of 16 states, along with the District of Columbia, have written to the company Fusion Project to ask immediately that they've reduced the alcohol content of Four Loko from 12% to 8% ABV to reduce the serious public safety risks, because a 23.5 ounce single can is deemed that it is a binge drinking episode according to the CDC. Which I was like, whoa! You don't really hear people petitioning an establishment to change the alcohol percentage.
Right. That's interesting.
I
Now,
don't really hear
also,
people talking about Four Loko anymore either.
no,
Right. If only not to bring it up in the news again. Just be like, oh, remember Four Loko? Because I thought they cut the crap out. Well, the problem was the caffeine that was in it, or something like that.
Maybe this is their marketing.
Oh no, we fell into the beast.
yes. Well, this was not even that. This is all the legal stuff that's going on. And
Wow.
quickly moving away from that, possibly on a November 2016 ballot, if they receive 365,880 signatures from registered voters in California, potentially on the ballot, there will be an initiative to lower the legal drinking age in California from 21 to 18. So the first step there is that they actually have to collect the signatures from registered voters in California to petition to have it added to the ballot. I thought that was pretty interesting.
It is interesting. I mean, because obviously, you can now do a petition about anything, but this is kind of that next step in actually getting it on a ballot, which is interesting, or
Right.
potentially getting it on a ballot, which is interesting. So yeah, I mean, who knows? I mean, that'd be crazy. I wouldn't know what to do with that. Instead of going to Canada, now the kids can go to California. So that's pretty much. Yeah.
And the last thing just on here was that we saw an announcement this week that Crop Bistro in Vermont, which we all are familiar with because their head brewer is the former brewer of Moat Mountain, has
No way.
Yes.
Huh. I did not know, as we all know, except for the host. No, that's crazy. No kidding.
Yeah, so Will, the former brewer, he started Crop Bistro. They are changing their name to Idle Time, Tyme Brewing, which I thought was an interesting thing because it sounds very close to a brewery in the Boston area.
Yeah, from episode something of the podcast as well. But yeah, and it's interesting because Vermont has been well, this is only the second time that I can come up with, but I remember the brewery that made Liquid Riot changed their name from what it was, and I forget the name of what they were before. Shoot, what were they
Infinity.
then? Infinity, right? So apparently, so it's interesting. I'm not saying Idle Time is taking the name of Idle Hands. I'll go ahead and say that's the name we're talking about. But yeah, it's interesting. Maybe...
Now, and it doesn't touch upon the one article that we didn't talk about at all, which was
the $1 billion question.
Yes, the Constellation has put in a bid to buy Ballast Point out of San Diego for $1 billion. I thought you were going to chime in with me.
And if you didn't catch that, it was not million with an M, it was billion with a B.
Billion.
It's a lot of money.
More.
So yeah, as we were joking on Twitter today, now you can get your Corona with a slice of grapefruit in there, and just this no, but who knows? And it's awesome. The Beer Advocate forums were pretty cool, because as those guys are. So check out that forum if you want some cool commentary. But yeah, more info to come. I'm sure by next Monday we're gonna have a lot of more information to talk about it. And I'd rather wait till then just to see how it kind of pans out, because I'm sure there's going to be a statement from them and other stuff.
And
yeah.
For anyone that doesn't know, Constellation Brand are the producers of Corona, Modelo, Pacifico?
Yeah.
Or no? Yeah.
Pacifico? Yeah, Pacifico's Modelo, yeah.
Yeah.
I just did a quick Google search. Do you know how long it would take them if they, let's say there's an elderly miser at Ballast Point sitting atop of a sea of dollars with a monocle and a top hat, counting his money? Do you know how long it would take to count $1 billion? 31 years.
Yowzer!
31 days.
Without having those automated counting machines at the casinos?
That's at about $1 a second.
Jeez, that money machine. Oh my.
Now, Chris, has there been any news that's caught your eyes in recent weeks?
All of it.
All the news.
Yeah, I apologize. I lost my video.
That's totally fine.
It's okay. We can still hear you.
I mean, it comes so fast and furious. It's hard to keep up with. But yeah, mergers, acquisitions, IPOs. There's just I don't think we've even seen half of what's going to come down the line. The big talk right now is that we're going to see a number of brands and breweries merge, get rolled up, and then go IPO. And that's going to be a big next step in that. No one's really done that. So the guys from Oscar Blues started acquiring brands, and my understanding is that they're going to eventually go to IPO. And I know Rich Doyle, he used to be with Harpoon. He's with a group that just purchased, I believe, Abita, and their intent is to then possibly go IPO. So there's a whole bunch of stuff going on that's at a whole level that I'm just not even, I can't even get my head around.
I mean, I was gonna say because that's probably we're in this layer of onion where we care about it from a reporting standpoint, but you need to keep your focus on what you're doing. But is it really that important to the beer drinker that doesn't know the news? It'll be interesting to see how far that news kind of affects the actual beer drinker.
Well, yeah, I've been a big advocate always of if the beer's good and you have a choice between something out of your market and in your market, drink what's in your market, because those dollars stay.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you have a choice between a really great beer from Maine, New Hampshire, Mass, wherever, in New England, and you have a choice from something from California, it's beyond me why you would choose California, because those dollars stay. They go back to the employees. Those employees go back into your retailers. They go back into the bars that sell it, and that money stays here. You look at the breweries that just sold on the West Coast. All the money we just gave them, it just went into the pockets of somebody else that's confident away. So keep it simple. If you value someone in your backyard, give them your money. If at some point they sell out and they piss you off, there's a guy right down the street that is probably just as needy and deserving of the money. So that's my viewpoint on this.
Any final words? I mean, this is a stupid question, but do you have any questions for us? The consumers and people that talk about beer all the time.
What are the things happening trend-wise that you guys see that is polarizing?
Of course, we weren't ready for these questions.
I'll go first.
Yeah.
I see that a lot of people are looking. So in the state where Brian and I probably drink the most, which is New Hampshire, a lot of people are looking for sour beers, and it really hasn't hit the market of New Hampshire as much it has in neighboring states. I think a lot of people are still really into creating that direct relationship with the breweries and really having not just drinking a good beer, but having an overall experience. And I don't say that that's any different than what it's been like sort of in our world on the past couple of years, but I think it's expanding out to a lot more people. I think the average beer drinker is becoming a little bit more intelligent enough to ask the questions and have the desire to learn more about. So really, like, the stupid joke of like a couple years ago was like, do you know what an IPA is? And you have to go like, oh, it was named after blah 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 blah. Now I don't think that there's anybody that you actually have to like. There's fewer people that you have to tell who an IPA is, but then you say something like, do you know what a Goza is? And they're like, no, what's that? So I think people are kind of getting like that past that beer 101 and being more knowledgeable beer drinkers.
Anything else there you see that, in terms of trends that,
It's tough. It's tough for me, and I won't talk much of it. I've seen, especially not in our state specifically, but I've seen a bunch of snobbery that has kind of been more polarizing in my view. Just kind of the folks that kind of stick to the rare hard to gets, but don't really help promote the local culture, as you were not you weren't saying, but they aren't keeping their dollars locally. They're kind of spending their money elsewhere. Which as a guy like me, who likes to advocate as local as possible, it's tough to see local forums bragging about beers they've gotten from hard to get places. But yeah, that's me being like a Clint Eastwood on my porch, old man kind of view that I'm not super pumped at some of the attitudes. But then again, I have an attitude in saying that.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Ben, do you see anything?
No, I was thinking kind of along those same lines. In this, I don't know if it's generational or in the sort of culture of Untapped and the check-ins. I think that there's a population of the beer consuming, um, you know, nation that is getting further and further away from brand loyalty and just focused on, you know, ticking off another new beer as opposed to going back, finding something that they like. And you see this in smaller markets, you know, among sort of like the smaller breweries, like, you know, the Bissell brothers have their fans and people will always go back to them, and, you know, these kinds of things. But, you know, I'm seeing an unsettling amount of people who are just excited to show off the new beer that they're drinking as opposed to just, you know, revisiting something that has always been there, like a you know, like a warm blanket. It's I think that's something that people need to remember is about, like, you know, some of the breweries that got us here in the first place, and how much of a foundation they are in shaping our focus on craft beer and you know, not forgetting or letting go, that kind of thing.
Well said. Yeah, it's interesting to me to see the consumer that wants to have something new every single time they consume. But that leads to a problem for brewers, and that's, you know, scale and style leads to a lower cost of production and then lower price to the consumer. And so this constant new is going to lead in one direction, and that is higher price beer. It's very expensive to come up with a new beer all the time. So that's, you know, that's a dynamic that, you know, it's tough to encourage that because we want a beer to be moderately priced and be affordable. Yeah, there's a couple trends going on for me right now that, you know, maybe because I'm just an old shit that I don't get. But, you know, waiting in line for beer is just something I would just never do. I would just never do. However, if you're waiting in line for beer that's local, and you're going to go to Treehouse, or you're going to go to Trillium, or wherever, it's any place in Maine or Vermont. At least we're supporting local brewers, and to me, that's a really great thing.
Yep.
That, you know, I came of age as a brewer in the '90s where no one believed in local beer, and the Boston consumer in particular was so gaga about things from other places. It's finally great to see consumers have that tenacity about local beer that we've never seen. So go wait in line because it's local, and I'm happy about that. It's the activity I don't really get. But hey, if you're supporting local and you're loyal and you're going to go every weekend, great. Let's keep that going. You know, I have to put aside my own personal thought about how I want to consume beer and remember that there's a consumer that's rabid about local beer in a way that, you know, it's different in the way they consume it and purchase it. But hey, we're building something here that's pretty neat.
I think we've sort of turned, or at least maybe I'll speak for myself, turned in partially to a curmudgeon. I don't really want to stand in line for a beer like that. I do if it's more so because I feel that I'm supporting the brewery and their efforts versus like, hey, I'm staying in line because I'm going to be one of the only people that gets this. I would rather just have like one of the mainstays and be like, and have a couple pints of it and enjoy it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's a difference between wanting, I mean, because we all know brewers and we've all stood in those lines, but there's a difference between showing support on on my side and then just being involved in that chaos. If there's a way that I could tell the brewer of that brewery, like, I wish I was there, but I want that chaos just to, like, sort itself out, but I appreciate what you're doing, so you don't have to see my face in the line waving at you. I don't know if that pisses anyone out. Like, for example, Mata Lesser came out a couple weeks ago, and at Tributary in Kittery. I just didn't want to be involved in that line, but I wanted, Todd to know that it was like, hey, congrats on the beer, that kind of thing.
Sure, and I'm glad Todd has a line because he deserves it. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then, so then, Chris, the moral of the story is don't announce when you're going to release a new beer in the Salem House. So just let us know, and we'll show up. It'll be a 4-person line.
Exactly.
I'm pretty sure we're never gonna have people waiting in line for session beer, but if
Mark
the day
that
comes
down.
that may happen, I'm gonna do everything I can to avoid that.
I don't know if you ever if you're releasing some of these 22-ounce beers only that were then now in a can, you could probably get a pretty good line for some of these on the first time they were available.
It's all delivery. Just start serving it and don't announce it.
Just keep serving it until they put a coaster on their glass. It's kind of
Exactly.
how that goes. But yeah, so Chris, I don't want to take up much of your time, but is there anything else coming up besides a full facility in Salem that's worth giving a shout out? Any events you're attending or beers coming out?
Well, we're getting into our slow season with January, February, March, so we got a couple road races, and that's going to be about it. We got a couple new beer releases that will be coming out. Previous to opening Salem, we got a Pullet Mave, which is a Czech amber lager. We've done a number of years. That's coming out in about a month. IPL will be coming out again late December, and then I'll do a couple new things in the new year. We have a single series that we do a new beer like every 5 weeks. Sometimes I develop the recipe a week before I have to brew it.
Is that's going to be draft only?
Those are only draft only. And a lot of those will be moving into the Salem facility that will eventually make their way to Crowler and Trans as well. But we did a whole series of hoppy pale ales and hoppy wheat-based pale ales this past summer that will be our new summer beer next year. And those were really well received. A version of that will be coming out of a new summer beer next year. But that's a larger release. I'm very excited about the smaller releases that we'll be doing at the brewery, and we'll hopefully see that come sometime this spring, hopefully early spring.
Awesome. Sean, Ben, anything? What do we got? Awesome. I love silence. Radio silence. Sean is speechless, and Ben is just right looking at what do you got, Ben? Anything?
Follow me on Twitter.
No, not you. Jesus Christ, not you. Oh boy. Well, Chris, we'll let you go because we want to finish up a couple things, but we don't want to keep you. So we want to raise a glass to you and Notch, and
raise a can.
Yeah, a can. Maybe we should do a live show once you're open in the spring.
Love it. Love to have you guys there.
Awesome. Well, we'll let you go, but we just want to say cheers, Chris, and continue success, brother.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it, guys. Have a nice night.
All right, you as well. Talk to you soon.
Bye.
Big fan. Thoughts? Thoughts on my comment about being a big fan? Yeah, so we have a couple minutes left. I wanted to go over real quick. So again, for those that are listening, if you want to find out more about Notch Brewing and you haven't heard much about them, get on over to notchbrewing.com. Notch Brewing on Twitter as well. There you can find out what distributors sell the beer, and you can kind of break it down from there as to where you can find yourself some Notch.
I want to know where I can find it in Maine. For sure.
It says Nappy Distributors. It's the greater Portland area, so maybe...
No, they cover also all the way south.
Okay, but they're from the greater Portland area.
Right.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, so Nappy Distribs.
You should be able to find them at 7-Eleven.
I think I did, but I wasn't... they have so much stuff there that I maybe mistook it for something else.
Maybe like South Berwick?
Or I'll say maybe... I was not going to mention town names, but ask your local, Ben.
That's where I was today, and I didn't. I kind of went in there with the mindset like, oh, they don't distribute in Maine, so I didn't even look at the. I was just looking at 22s because I was like, this will be a good beer to sit. A 22-ounce would be good for the show.
Yeah.
I didn't even look over at the cans. They may be there. I'm not even sure.
And Sean, you did the race last year, right? They give you a full German Moss glass.
Exactly. Yep.
Man,
and then
that's the jam. That's where you have to drink all those beers out of. Is that big old? How are you?
I'll tell you this wonderful machine right here was not made for running. So knowing that there was a great tasty.
It's made for hugging. Made for loving.
Oh boy, that's awesome.
If this session thing takes off, I'm calling it right now. Not your father's session root beer.
Ooh, nice.
It's gotten 0% alcohol. Tastes just like root beer.
I'm gonna call it. That was
root beer.
1 minute. Yeah, no. Yeah, that was an hour and 20 minutes into it. I'm gonna make that the show opener if I can find it again. But yeah, I just want to give a quick shout out to the guys over at Nirax and Camera in general. So the Nirax had the Real Ale Festival this past weekend, Thursday through Saturday, and I attended Saturday night. Sean, you attended a session or two?
I attended on Thursday.
And for those, so it's interesting, and it's become more interesting now that my wife is not a real ale or a cask beer drinker, but they now have cask ciders that were there. So one was from, I believe it was Bantam, that had one called the Wild One, which is a nice sour cask cider. So that kind of attracted her to it. But the event itself is really nicely run.
Down East also had a cider.
Down East was there as well, yeah.
Barrel-aged cask.
But what's cool is it's not a festival that you pay and then drink unlimited. It's you pay a small fee to get in as a donation to camera, and then you pay per sample, which I thought is kind of a sweet deal. So you're not forced to try some, or just drink beers of that you don't like. But if you're adventurous like the three of us are, it was definitely a cool time. And the beers, there's beers from all over, London, Leeds, Scotland. It was pretty cool.
The idea is that you so Nirax North, which is the second largest of Nirax sessions, the main one, Nirax, is in Boston. Has been in Somerville for many years, and they've been moving around a couple locations in the past couple years. That festival usually have about 140 to 150 different casks. Nirax North was kind of a satellite event that they decided to do as expanding out, and I think overall they had somewhere between 70 and 80 casks over the a three-day session. They may have pared it back this year based on what their space was and pre-sold tickets, but that's usually what they target at. And you may remember at one point they had a third location or a third festival, which was Nirax Portland, which was hosted by Novari.
Yep.
But if you remember, they had some issues with product registration in the state and decided to then kind of step away from Nirax Portland, Maine for a while. But they've still continuously done Nirax North and regular session of Nirax, and it's one of the best cask festivals east of the Mississippi, if not the best.
And it is not, and for those that are still adventurous with beer, it is not the crowd of a beer fest that you think of. Like, man, some of the coolest laid-back people go to that festival that you may have to worry about someone like screaming or anything like that. There were some cool people there, at least at the session I was at.
You'll also find a lot of brewers.
Yeah, it was cool. I saw the brewer from God, we had him on the Medusa was there.
I was there.
Just kicking around. He didn't have a beer there. Like, he didn't have a beer on tap. Just kicking.
Yeah, just coming checking it out.
Yeah.
Riverwalk was there while I was there, along with the Haverhill Tap guys, and I'm sure there was many other people in the room at the same time, but those are just the ones I was chatting with.
Sweet. Well, and one more shout out. Ben and I did a show at Levin again last week, video game challenge, and it was super fun. The beers there are good. We had they had a rare one from Stoneface. Blip was on tap, and that's a hard to get. So big shout outs to them. I did end up trying that Merkin beer over at Row 34 a couple weeks ago. It was awesome. It was even the name of our show is Merkin something. You're Merkin me crazy, but I didn't even know what a Merkin was. But you guys helped me out a couple weeks ago. Ben, any shout outs before we shut this thing down?
Well, just as long as you were, let me give you an early tease. The Let's Talk Beer 16-bit challenge that you were just mentioning, made its world debut last year at the Seacoast Winter Brew Fest.
Mm-hmm.
And we plan to bring that back in 10 times the form this coming year. So get ready.
Awesome. Yeah.
February 20th, 2016.
Feb 20. I was just about to ask for the date because we didn't know that yet. Feb 20. I'm in.
Mark your calendars.
Marking it right now. See, it's coming up quick. Ports and Beer Week. So get on it, Sean, because you are.
I've already started.
Okay, good. I wasn't worried. I was just kind of giving you a quick heads up. So the 20th is a Saturday, so that's good stuff. Let's go. I'm in. But yeah, so that nothing else this weekend. we should be still having a show next week. For some reason, if we don't, happy Thanksgiving, everybody, and hope you guys don't. No one gets seriously hurt on Black Friday. I think I'm the only one that goes out in this crew, so that's more of a warning to myself.
Yeah, don't get hurt staying home having your leftover turkey.
We'll talk about it. Yes, we'll talk about it next week if we have a show. But York River Landing is the place to be on Black Friday. You can go to York River Landing on Facebook to check out the tap list of their Black Friday event. Yikes, Rama. We got some dark beers there, folks, and some rare dark beers. I'm talking 09 Smutty Nose, 2014 1050. Some barrel-aged Allagash stouts that I never heard of. So Nick Evans knows what the hell he's doing, and if you're in the main area on Black Friday, that place is going to be the place to be. It is. He did it last year. It was awesome, but this year it looks like if you want Mott the Lesser on tap, that's not on tap anywhere else, get in there.
Whoa.
Yep, it's awesome. And yeah, come on, please. Great place. Sean, anything? Before we
I
shut it
just
down?
want to mention a couple things in the calendar coming up.
What we got?
We've mentioned it beforehand. The Harvest Beer Summit is this weekend in Boston.
Right. Yes, is that the castle?
That's at the castle. I believe
Okay.
there's like over 52 different breweries that are going to be there, and many of them I haven't even tried some of them. It's kind of it's some new beers out there that I have never had before.
Yeah.
Also, it already started on Sunday, yesterday. That Connecticut Beer Week is in full force for their first annual beer week. Good luck to them.
Yes, sir.
Also on Friday, which is the 20th, is the 6th annual Local Craft Sustainable Brewfest. That is at the Cruise Port in Boston. And I do want to make a mention to it. As we were talking about, I did go to Nerex, but also I went to Laugh Boston last Friday night, and I saw Piff the Magic Dragon. So if you're an AGT fan out there,
Oh boy, we gotta
Piff
shut this
the Magic
down.
Dragon was pretty funny.
Oh,
But I
boy.
didn't. Do you know where Laugh Boston is?
Laugh Boston. It's sort of north of Connecticut, but south of Massachusetts or south of New Hampshire. Is that
Oh,
where
yeah.
Boston is?
It's actually connected to the Weston at the seaport in Boston. So over by.
Oh, is it really? No kidding.
Yeah.
That's a cool area. Cool area.
Yeah. So it's kind of.
Like Summer Street area.
Oh yeah, that's
Nice.
exactly right on Summer Street.
Nice.
Yeah.
Very
so
cool. Did you
local
laugh?
comedy.
Because Sean's a big fan of comedy. Did you laugh?
It was pretty funny. It was
Yeah,
good.
Nice.
And then after the show, we did a meet and greet, and Amber actually.
I thought you said you did a meet and greet. I'm like, who the hell?
Yeah,
is doing that?
I did a meet and
You
greet.
did a fan meetup.
Everyone lined up for me for a couple hours.
Little two beer guys meetup. Oh,
But we have our picture, and Amber's holding Mr. Piffles.
awesome. Oh my god, I gotta check it out. And am I correct in saying before we close this down that tomorrow's a big day for you?
Tomorrow's a big day.
It is literally on my calendar. I have all my friends' B-days on there. So
Good
happy birthday to
birthday.
Sean. Early birthday.
Thank you, thank you.
You only turned 30 once, am I right? So
Exactly.
that was a couple years ago. So dead silence, zero laughter. Speaking of Laugh Boston, I'll be there. No, my show is just canceled there with those priceless gems. But yeah, Sean, happy birthday, sir. We'll have beers soon again.
Thank you very much.
Well, we're gonna shut it down. Thanks to those that were watching in the chat. We have many guests lined up coming up, and we appreciate you coming in the chat and talking with Chris. And for sure, check out Spring 2016 for the brewery opening, because that's going to be pretty awesome. So, Ben, Sean, cheers, brothers, and we will talk to you guys later.
Cheers, boys.
Cheers.
Bye.